Jordan Peterson was right about this one. As the dust settles in the EU due to everyone being shocked from the results of the recent election, many people were quick to start analyzing its results and the consequences that are soon to follow. However, Peterson had already predicted the rise of the right in his election based on many indicators that affected the voters' decision. This not only proves his deep understanding of socio-political issues, it also is evidence of the disapproval of the populace against the left's radical policies on climate change and immigration. But before I delve deeper into it, watch Jordan Peterson's prediction that he made several years ago.
For everybody watching and listening on YouTube, your time and attention is much appreciated. You want to be alert to the goings-on in Europe on the populist uprising front, in Spain, in Poland, in Germany, in the Netherlands, because this is a harbinger of things to come. It's incumbent on us, if we're facing political or ideological strategies that we don't agree with, to find our way forward in a manner that doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so, well, and then you see the example in the Netherlands, too, of the fact that the kinds of protests that it hasn't been as effective in Canada, by the way, but although we'll see what the long-term consequences are in the next election, you know, you have shown in the Netherlands, the farmers there certainly showed that these wide-scale protests, civil protests, and they have been markedly civil, like they were in Canada, can and do have a walloping impact on the structures of governance. And so, you know, maybe we need to take something approximating a 5-year view of this, you know, that this is the beginning of something new, and we don't want to get too hot and bothered about doing anything too radically stupid, and we can let the electoral process play itself out.
Europe has faced significant economic challenges over the past decade, including the Eurozone crisis, high unemployment rates in several countries, and radical climate policies. All of these led to protests in multiple European countries, and the Green European Party being the biggest loser as a result. They were campaigning on taking stronger climate action, but people are fed up with lowering their standards of living, which affects their livelihood and day-to-day habits. Right-wing parties in Europe have capitalized on these concerns and campaigned on offering solutions that fix many of the economic problems that people are facing, such as making the issue of purchasing power a policy priority. By the way, do subscribe for more discussions like this. Immigration has also been a major issue across Europe, especially in the wake of the migrant and refugee crisis that began in 2015. The leftist party's open border policies and prioritizing multiculturalism have faced resistance from populations concerned about national identity, security, and social cohesion. Right-wing parties, on the other hand, have taken a strong stance on controlling immigration and preserving national sovereignty, appealing to voters who feel their concerns are being ignored by the woke left. The French opposition leader, Marine Le Pen, who is one of the major winners as a result of this election, said, and I quote, "We're ready to rebuild the country, ready to defend the interests of the French, ready to put an end to this mass migration." As expected, the MSM went into complete meltdown after the election results and was quick to call the victors as populist, nationalist, and far-right. Just watch their reactions to this next series of clips.
Well, in Europe, voters in 27 countries have elected more far-right members to the European Parliament. That body has limited power, but the vote is having a significant impact. The results have prompted French President Emmanuel Macron to call for a snap parliamentary election in his country after suffering a major defeat at the hands of Marine Le Pen's right-wing party.
Polls across Germany have now closed. The ballot counting is now underway to determine what kind of European Parliament voters have chosen for the next 5 years. Now, going into this election, it was clear the European Parliament vote will be a major test for Germany's own federal government, led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Chancellor Scholz's Social Democrats are expected to see a sharp drop compared to national elections 3 years ago. And the opposition Conservatives, they are projected to come in first place today. The far-right Alternative for Germany is vying to become the second strongest party. And this is important for the European Parliament. Germany accounts for 96 of the 720 European Parliament seats. That's a major number there.
Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo has suffered a crushing defeat in the country's general elections, with his liberal Open VLD party managing less than 7% of the vote. Despite polls predicting that the far-right anti-immigration Vlaams Belang party would become the main political force, the right-wing nationalist New Flemish Alliance retained first place with an expected 22%. Flams Belang came in second, taking 17.5% of the vote.
Across Europe, voters prioritised economic and migration policies over the planet, as Green parties were the biggest losers of this year's European parliamentary elections. After their best ever results in 2019, the Greens are now left with 53 seats, down from 72.
That's a complete meltdown if you ask me, but the picture isn't as scary as they're trying to portray it. This isn't the rise of fascism like the MSM wants you to believe. To give a bit of context, the European Parliament consists of 720 MEPs for this election cycle, which are distributed among the member states proportionately to the size of their population, with Germany, France, and Italy having the largest shares respectively. The turnout was also the highest in the past 30 years, where 50.97% of the 357 million eligible citizens participated in the election, which shows that more people started realizing the importance of voicing their disapproval against current policies. But it is also important to note that Europeans treat these elections just as Americans treat the midterms, as in they use this opportunity as a vote of confidence for the current government and its policies. These MEPs form larger groups within the EU Parliament, and currently there are 7 groups. These are from left to right: the left, the Greens, Socials and Democrats; Renew Europe, led by the French President Emmanuel Macron; European People's Party, led by Ursula von der Leyen; European Conservatives and Reformists, led by Giorgia Meloni; and Identity and Democracy. As I mentioned before, the Greens were the biggest losers in this election, dropping from 72 seats to just 53. Renew Europe also lost massively, dropping from 102 to 79 seats, which prompted him to dissolve the National Assembly and called for snap parliamentary elections, essentially challenging the right to control of the parliament, which plays a significant role in the French political system. Macron is playing a dangerous game here because Le Pen's party won 32% of the votes on Sunday, and his party has won only 15%. That's more than double. These results have clearly made him appear as a weak president and undermine his political power, and if Le Pen manages to snatch the parliament from him, the rest of Macron's presidency would be a nightmare. One of the biggest winners is none other than the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who has gained 5 seats, and although that number doesn't seem big, but when looking at the seats that the left has lost, she will emerge as a power broker in the European Parliament, because von der Leyen used to meet a lot with the left on many issues, thus secure a majority past different legislators. Moving to Germany, these elections were nothing but bad news for Olaf Scholz. The Christian Democrat CDU, the party which Angela Merkel represented, and Alternative for Germany AfD, who are both on the right of the political spectrum, beat him terribly, with CDU having 30% of the votes and AfD almost 16%, and Scholz's party came third with a mere 13.9%. This also weakens his already fragile coalition and threatens his government. The story isn't much different in the Netherlands in the Dutch elections in November 2023. The center-right Mark Rutte, who was perhaps the last bulwark against a very slippery slope to the far right, especially with the anti-immigration and anti-Islam leader of the PVV, Freedom Party, Geert Wilders. Despite the fact that the party had become the largest in the Dutch parliament, having won 35 seats out of 150, it was still insufficient in order to form a majority standalone government without relying on some sort of coalition. Those coalition partners never came, despite the fact that the center-right Mark Rutte had redesigned in mid-2023 and announced to quit politics to effectively take himself out of any political Dutch government. It's a different matter that he eventually had to make a comeback after a failure of Geert Wilders to form a political coalition to become prime minister, but there's no denying the fact that there is a rumbling of resentment in the Netherlands, which translated into such a resounding mandate for the far-right PVV party. If not now, the resentment particularly over mass migration and the damaging EU nitrogen directives for Dutch agriculture is going to spill over, and it might take the Netherlands one of the last pieces of the domino to fall to the onslaught of the far-right population across Europe. And if this is part of a large right-wing populist wave across Europe and South America, it's only going to add more polarized world where the march of globalization is slowed down in favor of stronger national boundaries physically and stronger national writ in the sphere of economics and climate policy.